Welcome back to Yahoo Finance Live, everyone. The domino effect of slower global economic growth and higher commodity prices amid the Russia-Ukraine conflict adds pressure to a Federal Reserve already battling high inflation. For more on this, let's bring in Yahoo Finance's editor-in-chief, Andy Serwer, who joins us with his take. Andy, what are two ways that Putin's war on Ukraine hurts the global economy?
Yeah, Rochelle. Well, of course, the human toll is catastrophic and horrible, but there is the economic toll that we've been talking about for all these days and weeks now. And it's a paradox, really, because on the one hand, the invasion of Ukraine is inflationary in that it is causing higher prices for oil and gas, for wheat and for fertilizer, and for some other minerals as well. On the other hand, it slows growth in terms of Europe especially. But let's go back to some of those inflationary pressures first of all. I mean, we know that Russia is a big supplier of oil and gas to the world, but particularly to Europe, where it supplies anywhere from 25 to 50% of oil and natural gas. So prices there are much higher. Wheat and corn from Russia and Ukraine, they are a major supplier of both of those countries, particularly to the developing world and to Brazil. That's going to cause higher prices there all around the globe, and fertilizer as well. Then you have specialized minerals like nickel, which goes into electric batteries, and palladium. Sounds like a nightclub in New York, but it was actually. But it's actually a very rare mineral that's more expensive than gold, and it goes into catalytic converters. So for the old internal combustion engines, very important to reduce emissions there.
One of Jared's favorite clubs, Andy. You mentioned growth. How will this invasion of Ukraine impact global growth in terms of GDP? And as a side, how does it impact the Russian economy?
Well, I'll take the last part first, Dave. And I think it's really just financial suicide what Vladimir Putin is doing to his own economy. I mean, again, leaving the human toll aside, which is horrific. But as far as the economy goes, I mean, I was talking to a strategist from J.P. Morgan last night, and she was saying, you've got a country that closed its stock market for days and weeks on end, that's, close to default, that is basically just turned into a war machine and not functioning. So you got that there. But when it comes to growth, what happens is, and this is, at odds with inflation, which sounds like it's a heating up process, but of course, crimping growth is a slowing down process. And what that means is, of course, you've got consumers who are reluctant to spend and businesses reluctant to invest. The closer you get to the conflict, the truer that is. Of course, Russia and Ukraine, all bets are off. But even in Western Europe, there are real constraints right now in terms of consumers and businesses. The further away you get to Fortress America, less true. But, Goldman Sachs recently reduced its estimate for growth in the U.S. economy for this year because, in part, of the invasion of Ukraine.
And Andy, we've been hearing the S word recently, that's stagflation. We had it in spades in the 1970s. But with respect to Russia and just in general, is it possible to have growth, even not even high growth, but sustainable growth and persistent inflation at the same time?
Well, if you're asking about stagflation, let's have a stagflation party, Jared. What do you think? No. Let's not. Stagflation is a bad thing. It's actually, of course, the stag is the stagnant economy, and inflation is inflation. And yes, you can have those two things at the same time. We did in the 1970s. And two prominent voices when it comes to the economy are calling for that right now. Both former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers and Mohammed Al-Arian are both warning about stagflation. And that's because you can have a situation where you have inflation and low growth. In fact, one can lead to the other. You look at diesel fuel in Europe, prices are going up. And I think, Jared, you were talking about this the other day, and now the supply is constrained. People can't afford it, and they're going to be reducing and to the point that they're going to have rationing. So that's going to hurt the economy. So you have higher prices and slower growth at the same time. Again, we're probably a little further away from it, but I think it's something that Europe has to be watched, and that'll impact global growth and will hurt the United States to a degree as well.
Yeah, and we have to leave it there, Andy, but I want to get you back, hear your thoughts online or offline about that Club Palladium back in the days when New York City was a slightly different place.
That was a good thing.
Thank you for that. Yahoo Finance's editor-in-chief, Andy Serwer.